So guys, this is the Tax Terminator. I'm here in Bogotá, Colombia, and I've been meeting with a lot of colleagues, both CPAs and other tax attorneys, and we've been discussing different corporate structures for clients. We've been exchanging ideas, we've been learning from each other, and I noticed that there is a very common theme that I seem to have that is something that is very recurrent, which is that I don't love Caribbean companies, and that's what I wanted to share with you guys today. I have nothing against Caribbean companies, right? So if you want to incorporate in a place like the Bahamas, like the BVI, like the Cayman Islands, it can perfectly work. I'm not saying that they're completely useless. I don't want you to get that wrong idea. I do want to point out that in this era of international cooperation, of anti-privacy stances by most countries, I do think that the onshore-offshore hybrid approach may be more beneficial, but more of that in a sec. So essentially, what do we have? Jurisdictions like the Bahamas, like the BVI, like the Cayman Islands have obviously their tax neutrality that they're famous for, and that's great, that's fantastic. I mean, you can set up a company there and you can not have to worry about taxation at the local level, at the jurisdiction of incorporation level. You might have to worry if you're watching this video from a country like the US, like Canada, that has control for incorporation rules. You may have to worry about the tax consequences of having such a company in your home country, but as of now, you don't have to worry about taxation in those jurisdictions. So far, so good. Now, why am I not crazy about Caribbean companies? Number one, economic substance requirements. So what are they and how do they affect you? So since the late 2010s, I want to say from between 2017 to 2019, more or less, all of these jurisdictions, Bahamas, Cayman Islands, BVI, have introduced economic substance requirements, or at least most of them have. And so economic substance requirements are essentially rules and regulations that require you to have some kind of physical presence in those jurisdictions to actually benefit from the zero tax condition that they can offer you and they can provide to you. So if you just have a BVI company and you don't have any type of presence in BVI, depending on the type of business that you're running, you may not be able to take full advantage of that zero tax regime you were pursuing. So if you're in things like banking, if you're in things like IP and you want your BVI to hold IP, if you're doing intra-group dealings, meaning that you have an international business conglomerate and you have a BVI or a Cayman Islands or a Bahamian company as part of that group, and you want to use it to essentially, through transfer pricing, shift some profits from higher tax jurisdiction to those islands, all of these will require you to have some form of economic substance on the islands. Now, this varies, and obviously each jurisdiction has its own rules, but overall, the common theme is, having a local director, having a registered office, making sure that the income producing activities are taking place from those islands. So all of that is very important. In addition to that, I would also say that if you're just looking for a company to hold some investments, that can still be done. In fact, is one of the main use cases, I think, that is still very valuable and could still be argued for these types of companies. But when it comes to international business and transactions, for example, many international banks would be hesitant to open transactional business accounts for Caribbean companies. It is not that easy. Now, there are a handful of banks in places like Panama, a couple in Miami, not many, that might be able to consider opening some transactional business accounts for Caribbean island companies. However, it is still more challenging than other jurisdictions. In addition to that, there is also the subject of your image as a global business company. Having a company in the Caribbean means automatically for most of your clients, your vendors, your providers, your suppliers, your bankers, that you have your company in a well-known tax shelter. The image isn't great, and most people unfortunately associate these jurisdictions with some kind of tax evasion, which is of course not what we talk about here. We talk about legal tax avoidance strategies. We talk about following the rules, but unfortunately the stigma that these jurisdictions have don't allow you to fully leverage a good image for your businesses. And this is why I think that onshore, offshore hybrid jurisdictions might be more beneficial for somebody running a global business. So for example, I talk a lot about Uruguay on this channel. Uruguay is a great place, whitelisted, and because of the nature of its territorial system, you can run a company that is Uruguayan, sometimes from Uruguay, sometimes from outside of Uruguay, depending on how you want to do it and how you want to structure it. But you can have the same tax-free status as a BVI or a Cayman Islands company and still have a better whitelisted image running your business through a jurisdiction like Uruguay, for example. Costa Rica is another example that comes to mind. Costa Rica, also great territorial tax system, slightly less flexible than Panama's, but still a good image, and it doesn't come with the stigma of Bahamas, BVI, or the Cayman Islands. So I guess that is something else you could consider. Jurisdictions like Panama, I guess, are in a middle ground where, depending on where you are and who your clients are, you could still face a bit of backlash from the Panama Papers era, but that is rapidly fading away. And I do think that you would have an easier time making the argument that you're operating your business tax-free from Panama, where there is an actual big city with real economic substance versus a smaller island where it may be more challenging to make the argument that that economic substance can actually exist and that you're not just there for tax avoidance purposes. And that is ultimately the issue here. Companies in the Caribbean are immediately associated with tax avoidance and with no other great benefit, maybe asset protection to an extent. But for operational businesses, I truly believe that jurisdictions that embody more of this onshore-offshore hybrid will be more beneficial for entrepreneurs moving forward. I also believe that the fact that these companies are in jurisdictions that often do not have any tax treaties is also something relevant. As more and more businesses are run internationally, access to high quality treaty networks is important. And so again, if you run your business through a tax neutral vehicle in a jurisdiction like a Uruguay, like a Costa Rica, like a Switzerland, potentially like a Panama, you're going to have an easier time accessing these networks than if you're running your business through a Caribbean island company. So I think that you have to acknowledge that not everyone is made the same. And obviously, if you have a case of somebody who is willing to move and to relocate to one of these islands and to have real economic substance there, it can still work. I think the main island that we see for this is Bahamas and Cayman Islands, but more so than BVI, where people are actually willing to move there. They don't mind the island living. In the case of Cayman Islands, you can get there through investment. Bahamas as well. You can buy real estate. You can get in from an immigration perspective, and you can run your operations from there fully tax-free. But unless you're willing to go all in into these jurisdictions, I do believe that Caribbean companies maybe should remain more in a role of providing asset protection, maybe more in the role of assisting you in the role of a holding company, for example, to hold your investments and things of that nature. And you should stick to more onshore, offshore hybrid jurisdictions when it comes to operating companies. So there you have it. If you already have a Caribbean company or a company somewhere else, be sure to drop a comment down below and let us know. Subscribe to this YouTube channel, follow us on Instagram, and until next time, the Tax Terminator will be back.